Okay. Banned book club. Da, 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 da. Today is Lois Lowry's birthday. If you are interested in sharing anything you particularly like about her work as an artist, anything you particularly like about The Giver, this work, you can feel free to share and I will pass it along to her. I have some birthday wishes that I'm gathering and that I'll be sending to her at the end of the day. Okay, so we were reading chapters 9, 10, and 11. And this is after Jonas, the main character, finds out that he is the receiver. And immediately we see that he starts to be treated differently by the people around him. That all of a sudden he being elevated to this unknown but supposedly superior position makes it so that he feels isolated and that people don't really know how to act around him. And in this society, we know that the word sameness is used as the goal, a compliment, that this is something everyone is desiring to be the same. And that anyone who falls outside of this showing difference, that it is viewed as embarrassing or unacceptable, where shaming is involved and it is institutionalized as well, that people shouldn't desire to be feeling different than the rest of the community. So we see these systemic and cultural social forces that are at work to enforce these hierarchies and assimilation. But with him being in a little bit of a different position, now people, even though it is technically elevated, are treating him in a way they're uncomfortable around him because he is showing difference. Okay. And that happens immediately with his friend Asher as they're coming home. He does get his assignment very quickly, or like the first folder that he got. And this is what it says. Or a single printed sheet. Yeah, there's only one single sheet inside. Jonas, receiver of memory. 1. Go immediately at the end of school hours each day to the annex entrance behind the House of the Old and present yourself to the attendant. So the House of the Old is like the like where elder care happens. 2. Go immediately to your dwelling at the conclusion of training hours each day. Excuse me. 3. From this moment, you are exempted from rules governing rudeness. Okay, I would like that rule. You may ask any question of any citizen, and you will receive answers. I mean, that's pretty fierce. But also keeping in mind that, like, this should be allowed for everyone. Yeah. 4. Do not discuss your training with any other member of the community, including parents and elders. So continuing to set him up to be in sort of this elite, exclusive circle. 5. From this moment, you are prohibited from dream telling, which is a form of surveillance. 6. Except for illness or injury unrelated to your training, do not apply for any medication. Another form of control. 7. You are not permitted to apply for release. And at this point, he doesn't know what release is. It's just when people are forced to exit the community. 8. You may lie. Jonas was stunned. What would happen to his friendships? His mindless hours playing ball or riding his bike along the river? Those had been happy and vital times for him. Were they to be completely taken from him now? The simple logistic instructions, where to go and when, were expected. Every 12 had to be told, of course, where and how and when to report for training. But he was a little dismayed that his schedule left no time, apparently, for recreation. Yeah, so then he goes on and realized that, like, oh, he can actually lie. What if they had all been instructed, you may lie? In He's asking this question concerning the other people in the community. His mind reeled. Now, empowered to ask questions of utmost rudeness and promised answers, he could, conceivably, though it was almost unimaginable, ask someone, some adult, his father perhaps, do you lie? But he would have no way of knowing if the answer he received was true. So setting up to have more deconstruction of the society that he lives in, starting to see the Matrix for what it is, how it is all being set up, how there are certain things that are kept from people in order to control them. Okay, so Jonas, he sees Fiona again, and then he goes to his first training. And he starts to do like, oh, my apologies for doing this, following some of the same protocol that he shows in the rest of society. And the giver is like, oh, you don't have to do that. He says, no apologies in this room. We haven't time. Okay. And this is more of a description of what Jonas is expecting and how the giver clarifies the role and what they'll be doing. Well, Jonas went on, uncomfortably aware that he might be interrupting again. I'm really interested. I don't mean that I'm not, but I don't exactly understand why it's so important. I could do some adult job in the community, and in my recreation time, I could come and listen to the stories from your childhood. I'd like that. Actually, he added, I've done that already, in the house of the old. The old like to tell about their childhoods, and it's always fun to listen. The man shook his head. No, he said, I'm not being clear. It's not my past, not my childhood that I must transmit to you. He leaned back, resting his head against the back of the upholstered chair. It's the memories of the whole world, he said with a sigh. Before you, before me, before the previous receiver, and generations before him. Jonas frowned. The whole world? He asked. I don't understand. Do you mean not just us? Not just the community? You mean elsewhere too? He tried in his mind to grasp the concept. I'm sorry, sir, I don't understand exactly. Maybe I'm not smart enough. I don't know what you mean when you say the whole world or generations before him. I thought there was only us. I thought there was only now. There's much more. There's all that goes beyond, all that is elsewhere, and all that goes back and back and back. I received all of those when I was selected, and here in this room, all alone, I re-experience them again and again. It is how wisdom comes and how we shape our future. He rested for a moment, breathing deeply. I am so weighted with them, he said. Jonas felt a terrible concern for the man suddenly. Okay. And then they get into the process of transmitting the memory. So he makes Jonas take off his shirt, which admittedly is kind of like a weird thing, but he apparently has to have like some sort of skin-to-skin contact. But why does he need to do that? I don't know. Anyway, he shocks Jonas by turning off the speaker for the announcements that happen from the community because that's not allowed, ever. And he realizes that the giver has these special privileges. Part of the rules that he was given in the folder on that piece of paper, and also realizing that the rules will extend even beyond that he'll have more privileges. But he's also realizing at the same time that the giver has no one to share this with. He's weighted with these memories because he's the only one that has them. The man moved with surprising quickness to the corner of the bed where he was. He sat on a chair beside Jonas, who was motionless, waiting for what would happen next. Close your eyes. Relax. This will not be painful. Jonas remembered that he was allowed, that he had even been encouraged to ask questions. What are you going to do, sir? He asked, hoping that his voice didn't betray his nervousness. I'm going to transmit the memory of snow, the old man said, and placed his hands on Jonas's bare back. So the first memory that is shared is of snow, which is very symbolic of birth, especially like a first snowfall of a beginning, but also a beginning of the end, a beginning of winter, how there is beauty in snowfall, looking at individual snowflakes, highlighting the importance of individuality that people are not afforded in this society. This sort of purity that is symbolic with snow. How Jonas's mind is untouched by so many different things. And so now it also is a very core thing people think of in terms of like human existence. It's like, do you remember the first time you saw snow? Do you remember seeing snow falling and what it was like? So just using symbolism of a trope that people talk about when it comes to like memory and using it as an introductory method. He also sees a sled, and then he starts to realize that there are words popping into his head during this transmission of the memory. So he learns what a hill is. And then this is where he finally, like, this is what happens after the memory's transmitted. He opened his ordinary eyes and saw that he was still on the bed, that he had not moved at all. The old man, still beside the bed, was watching him. How do you feel? He asked. Jonas sat up and tried to answer honestly. Surprised, he said after a moment. The old man wiped his forehead with his sleeve. Whew, he said, it was exhausting. But, even transmitting that tiny memory to you, I think it lightened me just a little. So he doesn't have to keep all of this to himself. It even talks about climate control, that there isn't snow anymore because of this. I would not be surprised if, as the world is continually warming, at first all of these oligarchs are saying like, oh, it's not happening. They can only get around that for so long. They will probably say that it's climate control, something to that effect of like, no, this is like, we have control over this situation and it's what we're intending. So just talking about how like human domination extends very far in this society. And then he was like, but I thought I was going to learn more about pain. Jonas questions this, and the giver says, well, I started off with a pleasant memory. There will be painful ones, but that they don't need to get into them yet. Okay. And so now, after he said that, he's like, I can show you something that is painful. Said, well, since you asked the question, I think I have enough energy for one more transmission. Lie down once more. This will be the last today. Jonas obeyed cheerfully. He closed his eyes, waiting, and felt the hands again. Then he felt the warmth again, the sunshine again, coming from the sky of this other consciousness that was so new to him. This time, as he lay basking in the wonderful warmth, he felt the passage of time. His real self was aware that it was only a minute or two, but his other, memory-receiving self felt hours pass in the sun. His skin began to sting. Restlessly, he moved one arm, bending it, and felt a sharp pain in the crease of his inner arm at the elbow. Ouch, he said loudly, and shifting on the bed. Ow! he said, wincing at the shift, and even moving his mouth to speak made his face hurt. He knew there was a word, but the pain kept him from grasping it. Then it ended. He opened his eyes, wincing with discomfort. It hurt, he told the man, and I couldn't get the word for it. It was sunburn, the old man told him. It hurt a lot, Jonas said, but I'm glad you gave it to me. It was interesting. And now I understand better what it meant that there would be pain. Sorry, babe. There is a whole lot of pain that you have yet to learn about. Unfortunately, humankind is not necessarily the most charitable and kind at times. A lot of times. The man didn't respond. He sat silently for a second. Finally, he said, Get up now. It's time for you to go home. They both walked to the center of the room. Jonas put his tunic back on. Goodbye, sir, he said. Thank you for my first day. The old man nodded to him. He looked drained and a little sad. Sir, Jonas said shyly. Yes, do you have a question? It's just that I don't know your name. I thought you were the receiver, but you say that now I'm the receiver, so I don't know what to call you. The man had sat back down in the comfortable upholstered chair. He moved his shoulders around as if to ease away an aching sensation. He seemed terribly weary. Call me the giver, he told Jonas. And that's where we ended, on Call Me the Giver. So we're seeing this act of passing on memory be symbolic for historical knowledge, systemic knowledge, history, preserving memory, that this is important for human identity and also for not repeating certain things that have happened in history. Seems like we could learn a bit from this. Something that I really love about this book is that it conveys a lot of profound motifs of what knowledge is, how there's the symbolism of acquiring knowledge of good and evil with the apple in the book, that it uses symbolism very effectively to convey difficult themes and subject matter in a way that is digestible for youth. And that is age appropriate, where it is talking about these systems that cannot be trusted when it is created in this society meant to have control in every single aspect of people's lives. How that looks, what that means for historical knowledge, people's humanity, what it means for people's identity, how essentially people can't have an identity if they don't have this historical knowledge and the room to develop their own sense of identity as well. And that is a way to oppress people and keep them in line so that they aren't rising up and establishing their own forms of government. This is a common theme among writers, is the importance of remembering history and writing down ideas, keeping ideas alive, that we keep our humanity alive when we are talking about historical events and historical experiences that especially these capitalist, imperialist forces are trying to erase. We engage directly in decolonization and taking back power when we read the things that they don't want us to read, when we talk about the things that they would prefer that we stay silent on, and that when we talk with each other and engage in critical thinking, understanding what our opinions are, what we think, what our morality is, how that functions in the larger societies that we live in, how that dictates our forms of resistance, if any. And what it requires of us in order to effectively resist and overthrow these systems. Anyway, that's The Giver. I really enjoy this book. It, again, was like one of the first examples of me feeling like I really internalized the concept of showing symbolism, of recognizing the apple imagery of good and evil from the Garden of Eden in the Bible, and also the view of it being necessary to have knowledge, even about and especially about the things that are painful, that it doesn't do us a service by ignoring the ugly things that have happened in history and that are happening now, to uphold these systems of dominance that are held in the hands of very few who exploit all of us.